Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Plank. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims in order to explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Well, today is the 20,000 subscriber milestone, and this is only the third live stream I've ever done because I did a couple about a year ago and just kind of found it wasn't my preferred format, but I've kind of changed that mindset and might be getting into doing some more live streams from here on out. And I definitely wanted to make this my first return to the live stream format because we just hit 20,000 subscribers as of just a few days ago. And in keeping with that, in keeping with the growing of my channel, there's a number of extensions I wanted to make, some expansions to the channel that I wanted to make that we're going to talk about a little bit today. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the milestone, the 20K, about the history of how I got into this channel. Then I'm going to give you the announcements of the expanding of the channel. We're going to go over some religious news that's come out in the last week before we wrap things up. And of course, I'll be interacting with you guys in the chat. Of course, super chats will take priority. If you throw a super chat my way, I will absolutely be reading it and checking out your chat replies and comments and questions as we go through. So hopefully we'll have a good time. So, yeah, 20K subscribers, and that's kind of crazy to me because we're also coming up on the 2-year anniversary of my channel. I created this channel in March of 2022, and I remember when I did it because it was during spring break of 22 and had the week off and kind of didn't have much going on. It was a staycation for me for that week, and I thought, you know what? I've been looking into religion and trying to find reasons to believe in God for a long time now, and at that point I had been a out and proud atheist for about 5 years at that point, but I was still continuing to look into it and look for the arguments in favor of God from various apologists, and it was just sort of all swelling up in my brain, and I really needed an outlet to get my thoughts out of my own head. And so I thought, you know what, I'll just make a YouTube channel, I'll make a few videos on it, maybe nobody will end up watching it, and maybe this will just be my way of getting my ideas out into the world just for myself, for my own edification. And by the time I had made about 5 or 6 videos and put them out there, people started watching, people started liking, making comments, subscribing, and I thought, oh, okay, people actually seem to like what I'm doing here and seem to agree and want me to keep going. So I made more and I made more. And then after about 4 months or so, you may notice if you look through my upload history, I dropped off for about 6 months or so. That was because I got really busy again. Having 2 jobs, 2 full-time jobs kind of takes it out of you. And then trying to throw working a YouTube channel on top of that, I just ran out of time. And then I went on hiatus for a bit until spring break of 2023, when again I had time off, went back to it, and just made sure to make the time to continue to do it ever since. And yeah, it's been continuing to grow ever since then. So that's all because of you guys. I'm very thankful to everybody for being a part of this and helping my channel to grow and liking what I have to say and put out there and supporting me. And so I wanted to make some extensions, some expansions of my channel, and I've got those ready to go. So I'll go through those announcements now. For starters, I've got a Twitter. I've never had a Twitter before, except a couple weeks ago I decided to make one. I am incredibly late to the game on this one because, you know, Twitter's been around forever and I've never had one. I always kind of rejected it because I never really saw the need for it. I was like, what can I do on Twitter that I couldn't do on Facebook because I was already on Facebook? So I never had a Twitter. But now I have one because I wanted one for the channel. So Twitter twitter.com/professor_plink. It's also down in the show notes, links to it, and I'll have that as a link in all my videos from here on out in the descriptions. So go over to Twitter, check me out there. Mostly I just post anti-religious memes at this point, but those are always fun. So check me out, subscribe to me on Twitter. No, I don't mean X, because I will never call it Twitter undecided. I will never call it X, undecided middle ground. It's Twitter. Everybody knows it's Twitter. Elon Musk is psychotic in 1,000 different ways. No, it's not X, it's Twitter. We all know this. Also, Piao Octonawa, one of my favorite people who sends me super thanks on every video I ever do. Thank you for being here. You're awesome. We all love you. And said 20K. Dang, I was here when the party started. Yes, you absolutely were. You've been with me since the start, and I love you for it. So, yeah, that's my Twitter. Check me out there. Second thing is I have set up a Patreon page. Yes, I've gotten in on the Patreon side of things. So that's also down in the description and will be in the description of all my videos from here on out. You can go support me over there. Bunch of different tiers for membership, and the different tiers come with different rewards for doing so. There are a number of things that you can get from being a subscriber to me there, as well as when it comes to my thanks to all my supporters that I generally put at the beginning of my video. Originally, I was only, thanking 1 or 2 people per video, because that's when my channel was smaller, kind of all the super thanks I was getting, but now it's growing to the point where it's taking up more time, so I'm going to move it from the beginning of my videos to the end of my videos. That way it's not as time-consuming to newcomers who want to get to the meat and potatoes of my videos, so it's going to become an in-credit sort of a thing, but still, I will absolutely be thanking everyone who subscribes to me, who helps me out, sends me super thanks through YouTube, or supports me over on Patreon, as well as a number of other rewards that you can get for subscribing to me over there. Additionally, another thing that I have created is a Teespring store. So if anybody is interested in having some merchandise featuring a cycloptic pink tribble, they can check out my Teespring store. I don't have a ton of stuff in there yet, but there's always more stuff I'm creating. I really just slapped it together a week or so ago, and it's got some stickers in there, it's got some t-shirts, some sweatshirts, some coffee mugs, so you can get yourself some items featuring a little cycloptic pink tribble if you like. So, and of course, if you ever have any suggestions of stuff that you would like to see in a Teespring store, items that you would like featuring Professor Plink and is not there, shoot me a request, an email, and I might be able to make something up there for you. So, those are some of the expansions to the Professor Plink channel going out onto other websites. In addition, some other things I'm going to be doing is things like this. Live streams. I'm going to make this a more regular part of my channel. I'm going to try to make live streams bi-weekly. So every other Saturday at noon my time anyway. Might be different wherever you are. But this time, every other Saturday, we'll do a live stream, and we'll go through some news that's been going on for the last week or so. We'll go through any changes or updates to the channel, any interesting stories or tidbits we'll go through in a live stream here bi-weekly. And then also, I'm going to be putting together a newsletter for the other weeks, a bi-weekly newsletter for the weeks that I don't do a live stream. I'll send out a newsletter that contains some interesting news stories, my thoughts on them, some suggestions on movies or music or games and things like that. And if you're interested in being a part of the newsletter, that's one of the tier memberships over on Patreon. You can get added to the newsletter list. So those are some of the expansions that I have already set up, already got planned to go into effect, and potentially more in the future. As the channel continues to grow, there may be more things I'd end up getting into and end up doing. So always new stuff on the horizon as the channel continues to grow. So let's talk about some news stories, because there's been some interesting stories and things that have come out over the last week in the realm of religion and apologetics and such. The first and probably most well-known at this point, a thing that has really been getting all the headlines, is the shooting that took place a week ago tomorrow at Joel Osteen's church in Texas. So this occurred, let me pull mine up here. Yeah. So it was a shooting that happened at Lakewood Church, Joel Osteen's megachurch in Texas, and it was carried out by the shooter named Janice Moreno, and this happened on February 11th, so it was last Sunday. Thankfully, no people in the church, no victims lost their lives in this incident. The shooter did lose their life, was killed by security in an exchange of gunfire. There were some injuries, but other than that, there were no fatalities. So obviously this is a terrible thing to have happened, and there's been a lot of misinformation that has been getting kicked around about this particular story. There's been things on right-wing news outlets and commentators who have been saying that this person was an atheist and this was an attack against Christianity specifically. There's been no evidence of that being the case. There was insistence that this was a trans person because this person was kind of non-binary and had used male and female pronouns. There's been no evidence of that either. That's been debunked. I watched the press conference with the sheriff who was in the county who was delivering information to the media about this incident, and the sheriff specifically said there's no reason to think that this person was trans. This is a woman, and she's biological female and considers herself a woman. And so there was no real evidence to back up the trans thing, but of course the right-wing media took the very fact that the shooter had occasionally used male pronouns and just ran with it. And so a lot of misinformation about that. I always say when it comes to stories like this, you should always be looking for unbiased sources if you want to get the straight dirt on what really happened. And so anytime you're listening to commentators who have a decidedly biased slant, whether for the left or the right or whatever, you should know you're not getting the real information. You should know you are getting a particular slant, and that's not a good way to set your ideas about things, your perspectives on things, because you're just being led down a path. And so, yeah, don't go in for the misinformation on stuff like this. It's usually a good idea to try to get multiple sources of information, and that way you can get the different ideas, the different perspectives, and again, try to find as unbiased ones as possible. But it's always a terrible thing when shootings happen, anywhere they happen. But, you know, even though I'm an atheist, even though most of you are, we don't agree with the perspective of the type of people who would go to Joel Osteen's church, we certainly don't want anything bad to ever happen to them like that. Nobody deserves that. And the best to everyone there in trying to recover from this kind of situation. So that was one of the biggest stories revolving around religion of the last week. And then there's some other things. This last Wednesday, was Ash Wednesday. It also happened on the same day as Valentine's Day, on the 14th. And that can happen sometimes. But it was kind of funny to me that Ash Wednesday, you may have noticed if you happen to know any Catholic or certain other Christian denominations, might have been walking around with an ash cross on their forehead the rest of that day, because that was always the thing. You'd go on Ash Wednesday in the morning before work or class or whatever, and you'd get the ashes on your forehead, and then you walked around with them there the rest of the day. You weren't supposed to wash them off or get rid of them. So you may have noticed that. Ash Wednesday is just the beginning of Lent, so the Lent period where Catholics up until Easter are supposed to abstain from something, choose something to abstain from to, honor Jesus' sacrifice, as well as the whole not eating meat on Fridays. Catholics not supposed to eat meat on Fridays between now and Easter. And I was with my parents last night, and my father observes that, and so he had fish for dinner. I had fish with him, not because I was observing Lent. He knows I doesn't observe Lent, and he doesn't particularly care, but I like fish, so we had fish last night. But an interesting thing that I came to find out about the whole practice of Catholics not eating meat on Fridays during Lent is that there are a lot of things that any reasonable person would consider to be fish, or would consider to be meat, that Catholics, in fact, do not. So, did you know that according to the Vatican's definition, most aquatic animals don't qualify as meat? It was always weird to me that fish is not considered meat, because, you know, what is meat? You're eating the body of an animal. Fish aren't animals? Well, yes, fish are animals, but they don't technically count as meat, like the same way that, you know, cows and pigs do. What about chickens? Chickens are birds. They're not mammals. Does that count as meat? Well, yes, birds and turkeys and chicken, all that counts as meat. Why? This makes no sense. So even back when I was a believer, this always seemed weird to me. But according to the Vatican's definition, beavers, muskrats, and capybaras are also acceptable to eat on Fridays leading up to Easter. I don't know anybody who eats a lot of beavers, muskrat, and capybaras, but they could, because according to the Vatican and according to Catholic regulations on the thing, those are considered more like fish than they are any kind of meat-having animals. So, just the rules in terms of the Catholic definitions of what constitute meat has always been ridiculous to me. But yeah, so that's going on now. It's Lent, so Catholics aren't eating meat on Fridays and potentially abstaining from other things. That's when you're supposed to start abstaining from things. And one thing that a lot of people who do abstinence during Lent do is they abstain from sometimes sexual activity, sometimes anything, spending a lot of money on romantic interludes and things like that. And this happened on Valentine's Day. So I just kind of wonder whether there was a lot of conflict in the Catholics who wanted to start abstaining from sexual activity during Lent. And also it's Valentine's Day, so they really wanted to have that with their significant other. So conflict there. IL Launch said, 20K, my words, you're growing so fast. I'm so happy for you. You deserve it, Prof. Thank you very much, IL Launch. And thank you also for all of your super thanks that you've been making to so many of my videos. Then also Fancy Monkey Man says, congratulations on the milestone, Professor. Love your videos. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm glad that everybody likes the content that I put out there and finds something enjoyable about it, finds it informative, and enjoys what I do. So, our next piece of information and news story to talk about. We had the Super Bowl last Sunday. I did not watch. Not that I have anything against the Super Bowl. I usually do watch the Super Bowl with my family, but that didn't happen this time around. My family wasn't around for me to watch the Super Bowl with, and so instead I hung out with some friends who generally don't care about football and never watch it, and we instead just sort of sit around watching comedy clips on YouTube and telling jokes and laughing. But during the Super Bowl, of course, the biggest part of the Super Bowl is always the commercials, the advertisements, and the Super Bowl broadcast had He Gets Us ads, multiple ads during the Super Bowl featuring Jesus, saying that he stands for change of pace message, and he gets us, and you've probably seen this campaign. There's lots of billboards about it, magazine ads, and commercials on television and online, featuring Jesus saying he gets us. You know, capitalism being what it is, they paid their fee to get their commercials out there. They've got the same right to do it as anybody else. I don't particularly have a major problem with it, because there's plenty of ads during, well, all the time that I may not agree with, I may not like, and, you know, whatever. But yeah, this wasn't the first time the He Gets Us campaign was put out there. I think that last Super Bowl had He Gets Us ads as well. So it was getting a lot of media coverage and attention, and I was kind of like, why? It's not the first time they've done it, so kind of big deal. But yeah, Jesus gets us, sure, whatever. That's what they say, Jesus gets us so much that he never had a problem with slavery. He even kind of advocated for it a few times in the Bible, never had a problem with a lot of the bad stuff that was being done. So I guess he gets the bad side of us in that regard. He gets the sins that we commit. But, if we don't say thank you for his inconveniencing himself for a weekend before going to heaven, we get to burn in hell for all eternity. So, yeah, that's great. And then on Pope Watch, because I like to keep track of what the Pope is doing, I don't particularly have a huge problem with the Pope insofar as I do with any religious leaders, because I've said before in a number of videos, this Pope has said that it's possible for atheists to go to heaven. It's possible for it's better to be an atheist than to be a hypocritical Catholic. He's a okay guy on some things, on a lot of things, more so than previous popes before him. But he was giving a talk this last week where he blasted radical individualism. I get down to his exact quote. Yes. He said, Mama Antula's charity, above all in the service to the neediest, is today very much in evidence in the midst of a society that runs the risk of forgetting that radical individualism is the most difficult virus to overcome. Radical individualism is a virus. A virus that deceives. It makes us believe that it's all about giving free rein to one's ambitions. Now, maybe he was just talking about individualism in a different way than I understand it, in a different way than I think most people understand it, and it's generally utilized. Because when I think of individualism, and when the word is generally used, it's just when a society views the rights of the individual as paramount. That everybody has inalienable rights that need to be respected, even if that's to, the detriment of the whole. It's the difference between an individualistic society, like ours in the Western culture, and more collectivistic societies, like you find in maybe places like China and a lot of other parts of the world. And I think of that generally as a good thing. I think it's generally good that the rights of the individual be respected. But maybe the Pope is not necessarily thinking of that when he says individualism. Maybe he's more leaning on the idea of only caring about oneself, only being interested in one's own well-being, and only caring about your own drives. That's selfishness. That's self-serving. That's egotism. I wouldn't necessarily call that individualism. But just trying to steel man what he's trying to say. If he's trying to say that we shouldn't be only concerned with ourselves, we should care about each other, that's an idea I agree with. He was talking specifically about the charity work that this was going on. Mama Antula's charity, above all in the service to the neediest, is today very much in evidence in the midst of a society that runs the risk of forgetting that radical individualism is the most difficult virus to overcome. So yeah, saying that serving the neediest is important. I absolutely agree with that notion. So I may not like the way he went about wording it, and it makes for kind of a rough headline when he says individualism is a virus, because then he gets blasted for saying radical individualism is a problem, when most people view individualism as just respecting the rights of the individual, which most people generally agree with. But I'm not going to get down on him for a bad word choice, especially when he has been a lot better than a lot of other religious leaders and a lot of previous popes when it comes to a lot of social issues. So that, while there are things to lambast the Pope over, I don't think this is necessarily one of them. So this is the religious news that's been going on in the last week that I had to talk about today. That brings our news section of the live stream to a close. So, what are people saying over in the chat section? They're saying, Ember, 20K. Dang, congrats, Prof. Thank you very much, Ember. Thank you very much for being around and checking me out. So yeah, like I said, we'll be doing these live streams every couple of weeks. They probably will run about half an hour or so. This long, we'll talk about news, we'll talk about anything else. If you have any suggestions of things to add to the live stream, any questions you'd like to ask, there's another thing that we'll do from here on out. If you have any specific questions for me, you can pop them into the comment section of this video. That way I can, over the next week or two, check them all out, find some good questions, and we'll do a questions from the audience section in every live stream as well. So if you have anything for me, pop it down into the comments section. Also, reminding people who maybe have just come in a little late about the expansions that I talked about earlier on in the episode. I had a Twitter page. You can go check out my new Twitter over at twitter.com/professor_plink. It's also down in the description of the video. My new Patreon page, patreon.com/professorplink, and you can subscribe to me there, get a lot of nifty goodies for being a member. My Teespring store, if you want any Professor Plink merchandise, t-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, coffee mugs, you can check them out over at my Teespring store, also linked down in the comments section. Avid Plink Enjoyer, love the name, and thank you for your super chat. Says, sounds like a lot of good stuff coming to the channel. I'm so happy to hear that your channel is doing well and expanding. I hope only for the best. Thank you very much. Over in the comments, Milo Van Loon asks, have you ever been to Vatican City? No, I have unfortunately never been out of the U.S., to my great shame. I hope to one day. I don't know that Vatican City is high on my list. As an atheist, there's a lot of places I can think of I'd rather be than a place that is so massively steeped in Christianity. Also, Colorado Biker says, congratulations on 20K. Thank you very much, Colorado Biker. So, yeah, we will start to wrap things up here, and thanks everybody for being here. Don't forget, before you take off, to click the like, subscribe if you haven't already. There's going to be more live streams like this in the future, as well as more videos. I guess I should also mention that one of the reasons I have the opportunity to devote more time and expand my channel and do all these different other things is because I said at the top of the video, it was tough to keep everything going when you have 2 full-time jobs. I no longer have 2 full-time jobs. I'm of course a professor. I teach college courses. I also have been a radio broadcaster for the last couple of decades, and I do news and on the radio. That I have left behind. I have left behind my career in broadcasting. That's been the idea, the plan for a long time. It was only supposed to be a sort of short time, maybe a few years, that I was going to spend in radio before I moved on to other things, and I just kind of couldn't get away from it. But I finally have made that move, and so I no longer have the broadcast job that is bogging down a lot of my time, and I can devote more time to teaching as well as this particular channel. So that's why I've been able to make these expansions, and hopefully we'll be able to devote more time to video making, live streams like this, and other kind of online engagement. Frodo Baggins says, watching you grow has been a journey. Keep debunking these fanatics. I absolutely will keep doing so. Thank you very, very much for your super chat, and keep watching, and I'll keep making this stuff. So that's about where we'll wrap things up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other links in the show notes. And until next time, I'm Professor Plink, reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.